What the Ryder Cup is. It's drama.
I'm a big believer in fate. I have a good feeling about this. That's all I'm going to tell you.
All of us, we golf professionals, are so jealous.
Ben Crenshaw seemed like the perfect gentleman of golf. He was called Gentle Ben for good reason. He won 2 Masters titles, saved the Ryder Cup, and spent his career protecting the traditions of the game. But some of the biggest names in golf saw a very different side of him. Tom Watson, one of the greatest players ever, watched Crenshaw steal victories that should have been his. Tom Kite, his childhood friend, spent decades burning with jealousy over talents he never had. Mark James accused him of turning the Ryder Cup into a circus of hate. Greg Norman saw him as the gatekeeper blocking progress. Even the University of Texas went to war with their most famous graduate. These legends did not just compete against Crenshaw, they resented him. The reasons why reveal a darker side to one of golf's most beloved figures. The story starts in Austin, Texas, where 2 boys learned golf at the same country club under the same teacher. Ben Crenshaw and Tom Kite both studied under the legendary Harvey Penick at Austin Country Club. But from the beginning, they were nothing alike. Crenshaw was the golden boy, the prodigy who made everything look easy. He had a beautiful swing and a magical touch on the greens. Golf seemed to flow through him like water. Tom Kite was different. He was a nearsighted kid who was not even considered the best junior at his own club. He had to grind for every shot. He practiced until his hands bled. Where Crenshaw played with instinct, Kite built his game through obsessive repetition. Harvey Penick loved both of them, but he saw the difference clearly. In his famous Little Red Book, Penick wrote that Ben Crenshaw was always playing more than he practiced, while Tom Kite was always practicing at least as much as he played. For a young competitor like Kite, watching Crenshaw succeed with what looked like a casual approach was torture. It was not just unfair, it felt like the universe itself had chosen favorites. Kite later admitted that he was jealous. This was not petty jealousy. It was a burning competitive engine that powered his entire career. He said that when he saw players with more natural athletic ability, he wanted to take them out in the backyard and swing them. That rage, that frustration, was aimed directly at Ben Crenshaw. Kite felt like he had to work twice as hard to get half the recognition. Crenshaw believed in fate, in taking dead aim and letting the chips fall. Kite believed in giving luck a chance to happen through relentless preparation. He built what he called a warrior mentality to compensate for his lack of natural gifts. And the player he was fighting against day after day was his childhood friend. Their careers took very different paths, but both ended up in the World Golf Hall of Fame. Kite became the first player in PGA Tour history to reach $6 million in earnings. He was the leading money winner. His success came from consistency, shooting the kind of scores that would travel week in and week out. But the one thing that mattered most kept slipping away. Kite struggled for years to win a major championship, finally breaking through at the 1992 US Open. Meanwhile, Crenshaw won the Masters twice. He captured the most coveted prize in golf not once but twice, often through what critics called miracle putting rather than superior ball striking. For Kite, watching Crenshaw win majors through touch and feel while he ground away with perfect mechanics felt like proof that the world was fundamentally unfair. Before we go further, if you are enjoying this deep dive into the rivalries that shaped golf, make sure you hit that subscribe button and drop a comment below. Tell us which PGA legend you think had the biggest beef with Crenshaw. Was it Kite's lifelong jealousy, or does someone else take the crown? Let us know what you think. The tension with Tom Kite was personal and quiet, simmering over decades, but the hatred from Mark James was loud, public, and brutal. The 1999 Ryder Cup at Brookline, Massachusetts became the most controversial event in the history of the matches, and Mark James, the European captain, held Ben Crenshaw personally responsible for destroying the spirit of the competition. Mark James was a stoic, pragmatic Englishman who managed his team with cold calculation. He refused to play 3 of his rookies until the final day, a strategic gamble that backfired. Ben Crenshaw led with pure emotion. When the American team trailed 10-6 going into the final day, a deficit that had never been overcome in Ryder Cup history, Crenshaw stood in front of the media and said something that stunned everyone. He pointed his finger and declared that he was a big believer in fate. He had a good feeling about this. Then he walked out. To Mark James, this was not leadership. It was delusion. But when the Americans staged their historic comeback, James did not see fate at work. He saw something much darker. He accused Crenshaw of whipping up the crowd into a hysteria that crossed every line of sportsmanship. In his book, Into the Bear Pit, James unleashed a torrent of criticism. He claimed that European players and their wives were subjected to vile abuse from the galleries. His own wife said she was spat at by American fans. James placed the blame squarely on Crenshaw, arguing that his emotional rhetoric and talk of fate acted like a dog whistle for the worst elements of American patriotism. The breaking point came on the 17th green during the Sunday singles. Justin Leonard holed a 45-foot putt, and the American team, caddies, and wives stormed the green in chaotic celebration. The problem was that Jose Maria Olazabal still had how to putt to have the hole and keep the Ryder Cup alive. For James, this was the ultimate breach of etiquette. The invasion of the green was not spontaneous joy. It was disrespectful, trampling on the integrity of the game both literally and figuratively. Crenshaw later admitted that the team lost their minds and that it was a lifelong regret, but James was unmoved by the apologies. In his book, James criticized Crenshaw's apologies as fake, noting that Crenshaw always qualified his regret with a but, implying that the excitement was justified by the improbability of the comeback. James felt that Crenshaw's failure to control his team or the crowd delegitimized the American victory. He viewed Crenshaw as less of a strategist and more of a cheerleader, a term he used as an insult. While James had agonized over pairings and strategy, he felt Crenshaw simply rode a wave of nationalism to victory. James did not just dislike Crenshaw, he detested him for turning a gentleman's game into what he called a bear pit, valuing the result over the method, and forever staining the Ryder Cup with the ugly mark of hooliganism. Tom Watson had a very different kind of frustration with Ben Crenshaw. In the late 1970s and early 80s, Watson was the undisputed king of American golf. He was the heir to Jack Nicklaus, a complete player who was long off the tee, brilliant with his irons, and fierce in competition. Crenshaw, by contrast, was the gentle loser with a beautiful swing who lacked the killer instinct. The natural order between them was established at the 1977 Masters. Watson and Crenshaw started the final day tied for the lead, but Watson dismantled him, beating him by a distance to win the green jacket. At that stage, Crenshaw was just a player who could not withstand the pressure applied by a machine like Watson. But the 1984 Masters changed everything. Watson was a 5-time Open Championship winner and arguably the best player in the world. He had finished runner-up at the Masters 3 times. This was supposed to be his year. Instead, Crenshaw, who had been struggling with personal issues including a divorce and a hyperactive thyroid, produced a final round 68 to defeat Watson by 2 strokes. The nature of the defeat was what made it so painful. Crenshaw's victory was not sealed by dominant ball striking. It was sealed by a miraculous 60-foot birdie putt on the 10th hole, a putt so unlikely that Crenshaw said his caddy looked as if he were in a different part of Georgia. For Watson, who prided himself on execution and control, losing to a player who relied on miracles and feeling was a source of immense frustration. It represented the chaotic element of golf triumphing over the orderly perfection Watson sought to impose. Watson mastered the game through precision. Crenshaw seduced it through artistry, and when artistry won, it felt like a violation of the natural order. The long arc of their relationship concluded at the 2016 Masters, Watson's final appearance at Augusta. Crenshaw, now an elder statesman, waited at the back of the 18th green to greet him. Watson, ever the competitor, nearly holed a long putt for birdie on his final hole. When it missed, he threw his hands up in frustration, a gesture that captured his entire career, the relentless pursuit of perfection. Crenshaw was the first to shake his hand. The personal animosity had faded into friendship, but the competitive record stood as a testament to their divergent paths. Watson was the man who mastered the game. Crenshaw was the man who seduced it. Greg Norman represented a different kind of conflict entirely. This was not about jealousy or competitive frustration. This was an ideological war between the globalist and the traditionalist. Norman, the great white shark, embodied the commercial expansion and modernization of golf. Crenshaw stood as the guardian of its history and established order. The competitive tension between them came to a head at the 1993 Nestle Invitational at Bay Hill. Crenshaw, then 41 and considered past his prime, found himself in a duel with Norman, the dominant force in golf at the time. Norman was a polarizing figure, often embroiled in feuds with fellow players. This bad blood stemmed from his aggressive personality and his attempts to reshape the tour, including an early proposal for a world tour that threatened the PGA Tour's control. Crenshaw, a staunch institutionalist, viewed Norman's disruptions with suspicion. At Bay Hill, Crenshaw defeated Norman, a victory that was seen as a triumph for the old guard. Reports from the time highlighted the satisfaction among traditionalists in seeing the gentle Texan take down the aggressive Australian. The most striking intersection of their careers occurred at the 1996 Masters. Crenshaw was the defending champion, having won his emotional second title in 1995. Norman entered the final round with a 6-shot lead, poised to finally win the green jacket that had eluded him through a series of miracle defeats. Norman's historic collapse on that Sunday is well documented, but the dynamic with Crenshaw adds another layer. As the defending champion, Crenshaw was responsible for placing the green jacket on the winner. He had to watch as Norman disintegrated, a process that validated Crenshaw's belief in the mysteries of Augusta National. The course chooses the champion, and arrogance punishes those who try to conquer it too forcefully. Crenshaw waiting for Norman at the end was not an act of hate, but for Norman, it likely represented the pity of the establishment he despised. Norman's career was defined by being the victim of miracles. Bob Tway's bunker shot, Larry Mize's chip in. Crenshaw was the beneficiary of such miracles. This cosmic injustice fueled Norman's resentment toward the lucky traditionalists like Crenshaw. In recent years, This ideological rift has only widened. Norman's leadership of LIV Golf, the Disruptor League, is the opposite of everything Crenshaw stands for. Crenshaw represents the PGA Tour legacy and golf history. Norman has spent his life trying to dismantle that very establishment. The hate here is not personal, it is systemic. Crenshaw is the preservationist, Norman is the destroyer. But perhaps the most surprising conflict in Crenshaw's life has nothing to do with rival players. It is a legal and political war with the University of Texas, his own alma mater. The conflict centers on Lyons Municipal Golf Course, known locally as Muni. The course sits on 141 acres of land donated to the University of Texas in 1910. The university has leased the land to the city of Austin for use as a golf course since 1937. For Crenshaw, Muni is sacred. It is where he learned the game, winning his first trophy there as a fourth grader and making his first hole-in-one with his mother's 5-iron. Beyond personal sentiment, Crenshaw argues that Muni is a vital civil rights landmark. In 1950, following the Supreme Court decision in Sweat versus Painter, which integrated the UT Law School, Muni quietly became the first municipal golf course in the South to desegregate. Legends like Joe Louis played there during the era of segregation, but the University of Texas Board of Regents views the land very differently. They see it as an underperforming asset. The city of Austin pays UT approximately $490,000 per year to lease the course, but UT officials testified that if developed into a mixed-use residential and commercial district, the land could generate $5.9 million annually for the university endowment. In 2011, the Regents notified the city of Austin of their intent to let the lease expire in 2019, paving the way for development. Ben Crenshaw leveraged his immense popularity to block the plans. As co-chair of the Muni Conservancy, he led a sophisticated lobbying campaign called Save Money. The hate from the university administration stems from Crenshaw's effective obstruction. In testimony to the state legislature, Crenshaw argued against the financial logic of the Regents, stating that people talk about the worth of this course, but it is incalculable, not only in its acres, but what it has meant to people and what it can mean in the future. Crenshaw further inflamed tensions by publicly stating that the only thing developers would put over the course were parking lots, framing the university's financial goals as acts of cultural vandalism. He said they literally need to take parking lots and put back a paradise. To the Regents, Crenshaw is a sentimentalist, interfering with the serious business of higher education funding. The university has a history of using the land as leverage. In 1973, UT threatened to sell the course to force the city to pay for street realignment. Crenshaw's campaign has successfully delayed development through lease extensions and getting the site listed on the National Register of Historic Places. But this victory has come at a cost. He is no longer just a legendary alumnus. He is a formidable opponent who values the civil rights site over the university's endowment growth. The exhaustive look at Ben Crenshaw's conflicts reveals a striking contradiction. While the world sees Gentle Ben, the historian and artist, his adversaries see a figure of immense frustration. To Tom Kite, Crenshaw was the embodiment of cosmic unfairness, the prodigy who did not have to bleed for his success. To Mark James, Crenshaw was the dangerous nationalist, a captain who weaponized fate and hysteria to incite a mob. To Tom Watson, Crenshaw was the elusive ghost, the player who could override superior mechanics with inexplicable miracles. To Greg Norman, Crenshaw was the establishment gatekeeper, the beneficiary of the very traditions that excluded him. To the University of Texas, Crenshaw is the sentimental obstructionist, a celebrity using his clout to block financial optimization. At 73 years old, Crenshaw remains a beloved figure, but these shadows define his legacy as much as his triumphs. He is not merely a passive recipient of fate, he is a fierce, sometimes ruthless defender of his worldview. Whether on the greens of Augusta, in the chaos of Brookline, or on the legislative floors of Texas, Ben Crenshaw has fought to ensure that his version of the truth prevails, that history, feeling, and destiny matter more than mechanics and money. The hate he has incurred is simply the cost of that conviction. But here is the remarkable thing. Despite all the resentment, all the conflicts, all the accusations, Crenshaw's impact on golf is undeniable. His artistry inspired millions. His respect for tradition preserved the soul of the game. His emotional connection to golf's history gave the sport a depth that pure athleticism never could. The legends who hated him also, in their own way, respected what he represented. Because love him or hate him, Ben Crenshaw changed golf forever. If this story opened your eyes to a side of golf history you never knew existed, do not forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell. Drop a comment and tell us what you think. Was Crenshaw a victim of jealousy, or did he really cross the line? We want to hear your take. Thanks for watching, and we will see you in the next one.